Today, we want to see what we have learned in the past 3 workshops, bring together and apply it in our lives. And we'll go over these different techniques and learning steps to really integrate it into our lives and to live aligned, not reacting anymore to our external circumstances, but to really to live in alignment with our vision, with our truth, with what we want to achieve in our lives. Okay. So our journey today, there are 4 steps. We have 4 topics to look at. And the first one is we want to close the gap between what we know and what we're really doing. It's not the same to know something and to really follow it, to embody it. So we will look at the 4 steps of learning. Why it is not enough to just intellectually understand something, but what it takes to really live by it, and how to bridge this understanding from theoretical, intellectual understanding to transformative knowledge and living. And then we want to look at the cause and effect relation, what really makes the difference in order to implement any changes. We'll see how it's the inner state which determines the outer world, our reality, according to the law of resonance. And then we will repeat the map of consciousness from where we act, the 4 levels of consciousness. Some of you are very familiar with them, but because it is important to understand, we are revising it again with new slides. And we'll also look more in detail at the power that lies at each level and how we can shift from one level to the other. And then finally, how to integrate all this into our daily lives, some practical tools for embodiment so that we can really live in the presence. So just to review what we have already learned in the last 3 sessions. First, we looked at the balance and harmony, how to create balance by deflating significance or lowering the importance. It's a natural law that if we put too much importance on something, it creates an imbalance. And then in order to create the balance, there is a counter movement, a strike back. So if we release excessive attachment to an outcome, by lowering the importance, then we can get into balance and then we can get easier into flow. That was our first workshop. And then in the second workshop, we looked at fields, how we are influenced by collective fields, first our own field, then collective fields, how we can activate our torus field and recognize these invisible forces. The egregores was actually the last one, the last workshop, where we looked at these collective fields, how they influence us in a subtle way, and how we can stop them from draining our energy and call our energy back. So now we want to see how this unfolds in our inner world, what our inner orientation has to be in order to achieve these desired results. So first, let's look at the gap between knowing and doing. So here you see the picture of a smoker. Every smoker knows that smoking is harmful for the health, but still so many people are smoking. So why is that? Why is it not enough to intellectually understand something? It remains theory. It doesn't really touch the heart. That means there are some patterns that resist the change, and these are deeper emotional patterns in our chitta, in the subconscious. These can be habitual reactions and unconscious programming. And this is why just knowing, intellectual knowing, is not enough to change a habit, to get out of it. So in order to achieve true transformation, we have to shift from the intellectual understanding, that means the brain, into emotional understanding and integration, which is the heart. We have to align the head and the heart until it becomes part of our identity. There are 4 states of knowing. And if we can understand these first states, it will help us in our journey from ignorance to mastering any field. And that applies to virtually anything, whether we want to learn a new skill, a music instrument, a language, philosophy, practically anything. So the first state is unconscious incompetence. If we want to get into a totally new field, we have no clue about what we don't know. We may in principle know, for example, Sanskrit. Okay, I don't know Sanskrit, but I don't really know what all I do not know. So I'm not aware of it. It's just as long as I have not interacted with the subject anyway, I don't know about it. Or I may not even know that something exists because I've never heard about it. That is the first step. So now if I'm interested to learn that subject, or in that case, if I want to change a pattern, is there anything which I need to do in order to achieve the result, then I am aware of what I do not know. I see the gap between my ignorance and the result that I want to achieve. So in the case of smoking, it would be, I know that I'm not able to give up smoking, but I don't know how to get there. Or for devotees, of course, smoking is not really such an issue, but it could be learning any instrument, or it could be we want to get better at any area in our seva, maybe it's deity worship, or even we want to improve our meditation, our japa. So we recognize the patterns. We know what the problem is, but we are struggling to change them. We're not really able to get there. The third step is conscious competence. So that means we have really started learning something. If it's, let's say, driving is a very good example. So if we started learning driving, then we know how to shift the gears, when to brake, we know the traffic signs, we know all that. But when we have just learned it, we are very aware of it, we're very conscious of it. So we have to really think every time, now I have to shift the gear, now I have to stop, I have to do this, I have to do that. Everything requires our conscious attention. And that applies to any sort of learning, new learning. And then as we practice it, it becomes more and more part of ourselves. It becomes a habit, and our brain doesn't want to struggle every time to bring it to the forefront of the mind. So it sinks down into the chitta. It becomes unconscious competence. So that means it's effortless. It becomes natural. In the example of driving, it means we know how to drive our car. We can talk while we do that. We don't have to pay attention to the mechanics of driving the car. As soon as there's a problem, as soon as somebody brakes in front of us, then of course we become very aware. But otherwise, it is like unconscious, it's automatic. And that is what we want to achieve. If we want to change any pattern, then it becomes our second nature. It becomes part of our identity. So now how to make that shift? So first we acquire a new knowledge. As we said, it's the intellectual level of understanding something. And then it will only happen, we will only be able to really embody it or implement it if there's congruency between our feelings and our thoughts. So the heart and the mind or the brain have to be aligned. We have to really want it. If there's any subconscious resistance, then it will not happen. So any attachment to something which is against that will stop us from achieving that. But once we have aligned this heart and brain, and once we are clear that we want that, that is our goal, then it becomes our identity. This is who we are. Let's take the example of becoming a devotee. So first we may read some books about bhakti, and we think, wow, this is very fascinating and this seems to be the right thing, but we don't know how to do it. We haven't yet met a teacher, or maybe we met somebody, but we haven't had any personal interaction. So we cognitively understand it. And then when we start getting into the practice, then we really, we know this is what I want. Now, if there is any resistance, for example, I have some habits which are counter bhakti, maybe I still have some bad habits, whatever it may be, then of course, then there is the feelings and the thoughts are not matching. So until they fully match, and I know that this is the only thing I want, I will not be able to make this my identity. But once it's my identity, then I'm a devotee, and that's it. So now let's look at how most people live their lives. Usually it is at the level of the effect, the outcome. So it's in the external world where we try to make changes. We try to fix circumstances. We make a certain move. We're chasing the outcomes. And that causes exhaustion. We repeat patterns, but we are not getting really to the root. This is, if you remember the 4 levels, the struggle of the by me state. I'm working in the external world to achieve something. But unless I'm changing inner patterns, it's always the hamster wheel. I'm not feeling that I'm progressing, or I'm getting the same results, but I'm not making fundamental changes. So an example is like, you're mopping the floor and the faucet is still running. So it'll never be clean and dry unless you close the faucet. The principle which we have to understand here is that the outer world follows the inner world. So the first thing that we have to do is change the inner world. So not trying to change the effects, but going a level deeper and looking at the cause which created these effects. So not fighting the symptoms, but addressing the source. So we have an inner world and we have an outer world. The outer world is the physical world that we perceive with our 5 senses. These are material objects, the physical circumstances, or the externals that we're dealing with. And this is where most people focus their attention and where people usually try to change. And that is the struggle. And then we have the inner world, metaphysical, that means beyond the five senses, our feelings, awareness, consciousness, our inner states, our bhava, orientation. So this is the cause, and the transformation is at that level. An example we can use in this regard is a tuning fork. So if you imagine we have a room full of tuning forks vibrating different frequencies, and then we have one tuning fork on a stage. So if I strike that fork, then exactly the one which matches that frequency will start to vibrate. This is the law of attraction and resonance. And if we understand from quantum physics point of view that everything is wave and particle, and that the wave, which is the world of potentiality, underlies the particle, which is something which Einstein said, then we understand that the universe is constantly vibrating in different frequencies. And we are energetic beings, so we are also vibrating on a certain frequency. And this is what we are broadcasting out into the external world. Our inner frequencies are determined by our inner state, which means our thoughts, our emotions, and our beliefs. So exactly at that frequency where we vibrate, this is what we are being played back, what is reflected to us in the same way as a tuning fork. So our inner world is the cause, that is the frequency which we send out. And then the outer world responds by a matching frequency. So we get exactly that which we sent out. So if our emotional bank account is very low, then we cannot expect in the outer world a very big bank account, like abundance. If we want that, we have to match our inner state first. So our emotional bank account has to rise in order to attract that in the outer world. And here it's important to understand that it is not really the external circumstances which determine our inner state, because there's a constant interaction between this outer and inner world. But it's not directly the external circumstances, but it is our interpretation of them. And that is very important to understand. How we interpret the external world is how we vibrate. That is what our inner state finally will be. And if we focus on whatever is missing in our life, then this is what we are attracting, and we are getting more of that. So an example is how we interpret the world, the externals. Just imagine that you receive a one-word text message from any superior, let's say your boss. And the text message may just say tomorrow. So there can be two scenarios. One is that you're already worried about your job and some of your co-workers have been fired. And now you expect that, oh, maybe tomorrow the same will happen to me. So your inner state, your response to that message is fear and anxiety. So the result in the outer world is, because you are in anxiety, in fear, then you are stressed, You project that negativity into the outer world, and you attract a very tense interaction. Or in another scenario, maybe you have been waiting for promotion, a salary rise. So you see the message, and that's a very good sign, and you're excited, you're joyful, and you're looking forward to that, and you feel confident, optimistic. So that is a very positive and productive encounter. So the external event or stimulus is the same, but because you interpret it differently, it created a different reality. So far, is that clear? In the chat, if you just write a 1, if that is clear so far.
I have a question already to the beginning. So the unconscious competence, is this the flow state through me, or is it something different?
The unconscious incompetence, that is not exactly translatable into any of these states. But the conscious incompetence, it's a very fruitful state which can be used as the flow state, because if you continue doing that, if you continue in that state where you are aware of not knowing, and you get over the frustration, then something very interesting is happening. And that is the result of researches which have been done recently. The brain produces myelin, which is a substance which encodes your neural pathways in the brain. So that means the signals can go faster. So your brain works better. So if you get over that state and you produce a lot of myelin in your brain, then you will learn easier, better, and get better results. So the more myelin is accumulated in your brain, the better is your thinking, the better is your learning, the better is the experience. And by the way, they found Einstein, he didn't have a very big brain, but they found a lot of myelin in his case. So that's a little aside, but we'll get to the states later. But we cannot directly translate it one to one, in short.
Okay. So the next question may be already clear. If I'm teaching, I do it for a long time. I like it. It's a repetition of the courses. Not all the things are changing. So it's like a flow for me. But this is not the same kind of flow we're speaking on this frequency level. Or what would you say?
Yeah, so that is flow. Of course, that is flow state. That is definitely flow state. There are different areas in our life. We're not in all areas in our life on the same level. And we'll go to that. We'll look at it in detail later. So, but when you're teaching, it is exactly you are in the flow state. Absolutely. It's effortless. But it's possible that you get out of the classroom, and then you have a whatever family situation or anything else, and then you shift into another state. But as you are teaching, that is the state, that is a flow state where you feel totally aligned and it's just going through you. It's effortless. That's a sign of the flow state. Yeah.
And then I have another question about the controller. So what it really means, so while observing, I was a little, the question came up. So if I don't want to be the controller, I let the things go. But let's say I have to achieve something, so I have some discipline. So I have to control. I have to say, no, you don't do this. You get up or whatever it is. So there I have to be the controller to achieve something. So is it a contradiction?
No.
How can I see it?
That is that is absolutely fine. You can be in the flow state and do that. Because that is something that is a different kind of control. We can use a synonym for that. and then it will become clearer, I think. Let's say instead of control, you say you manage. It's like an orchestra. You have a classroom full of students, and you have to manage them. So you can do this very easily. It doesn't take any effort. You see, this person takes too much time. This person needs a little bit a boost or whatever it is. So you are controlling it in a very playful way, which doesn't make you feel that you're the one who has to do that in order to achieve the result. You can still feel in the flow, it's going through me. It's a different consciousness behind it. I would suggest, let's wait. Once we go over the states, I think it will become clearer. So now we have here an example to make it clearer. So imagine you are a farmer and you're planting, let's say, apple seeds. You're planting apple seeds and you're doing whatever is necessary. And so your inner state is, let's say, the planting of the seed. And then the actions are you're watering the seed and you're weeding, whatever is necessary. And then the result is that you get what you planted, namely apple trees, which have apples. So now maybe you wanted to have mangoes and you're surprised why there are apples. But obviously, in order to get mangoes, you have to plant mango seeds. So we all understand that from the point of view of karma, the cause and effect. We plant the cause, which is the apple seed, and we get the apple tree. So if you want to have mango and we start painting the mangoes and trying to make an apple and mango, it does not work, obviously. So that's exactly when we are trying to fix the outer circumstances. We're trying to fix the externals by managing, by acting, by trying to achieve something in the outer world. But what we have to do is we simply have to plant a different seed, and then naturally we get that without any effort. Another way to understand is our life is like an art gallery. So you can say there are different paintings on the wall, and all these paintings are your lived results, whatever you have achieved in your life, your relationships, your experiences, anything is there on these pictures. Now, if you look at them and you don't like them, there's no point to argue with the curator of that museum. He will probably throw you out. Or if you complain about the picture, there's no point. You can't do that. The only thing which you can do is you walk into another room. So you plant different seeds. You choose different inner state, a different consciousness. And then the external circumstances, the pictures which you will get are accordingly. So how reality unfolds in a chain is, first, there is our perception, our awareness. That's the level of consciousness. And we are looking at these 4 levels in a moment. So the way I perceive reality is the important point, not what it is, because there's no so objective reality. It's always our perception of it. And then accordingly, our reaction to it, our inner state. So that's the inner orientation, our stance towards life. So we can be very enthusiastic about any message which we get, like in the example of that one word tomorrow, or we can be fearful, afraid, we can be angry. All our emotions depend on our perception of reality. And the next thing we do is our action. So according to our inner orientation, we will act. If we are frustrated, if our vibration is very low, if we are angry, then our action will be accordingly. We will be quarreling, we will be fighting with people, we will be complaining, whatever it will be, but it will reflect our inner state. If we are joyful, if we are grateful, if we are loving, there will be totally different action. And then the outcome is a feedback which we get to all these other levels, 1, 2, and 3. So that means when we look at the outcome, we can understand our inner orientation and our perception. Because that's the action is the result of that. And that flows from our awareness. So this inner orientation, we can call it bhava, but of course that's not the bhava, the bhakti bhava. It's just a permanent, we can say, stage. We can distinguish between a stage, which is one of these 4 levels, and a state, which is more temporary, because the state can change very quickly, whereas a stage is something which is like an underlying pattern, which does not change so easily. It is a stable foundation. It's not a fleeting emotion, but it is our general take on life. And for that, we have this model of the 4 states of awareness or agency. So according to this foundation, we make conscious choices. And these choices are interpretations of what we perceive, our perceived reality. So this underlying orientation or stage is that which persists. But then we have these temporary states, and these can change. And any change can happen first when we prolong, when we become aware of these states. For example, if I'm generally a dejected person and depressed, but there are some moments of happiness, of joy, then these are the states. So I experience happy states in a generally dejected mood where I find myself as a victim. But being conscious of this orientation helps me to get out of it. That is the first step, awareness. Where do I stand? And that is the way to change. That's the empowered stance. Not controlling the outer world, because this is not going to happen. If we start painting the apples and trying to make mangoes out of it, that's controlling. We won't get mangoes. We have to change our inner patterns. So it's not the control, but to take a different stance by aligning our actions with our inner state from a place of alignment. So first we have to master the inner state, regardless of the outer conditions, and then the outer conditions will automatically follow according to the law of resonance. To understand it even better, let's imagine, as we have all seen, a fly trying to get out of a window. The fly is always hitting the window. it's just crashing against the glass. And you're watching it and you're thinking, this fly is really stupid. The window is open. All it needs to do is really just shift perspective and find that opening space and fly out into the freedom. But it doesn't do that. It's not able to. It's not within its perspective. It only sees the small frame in front of it. And by force, harder and harder, smashes against it. And then after some time, you'll see it upside down. It hasn't found the way out. So this is the difference between power and force. Real power is to be able to get a different perspective, change my circumstances and find another perspective and get out, change my life. And force is just, I'm trying to control, I'm trying to change the outer world, but it's not going to happen. So what is really necessary is a shift in perspective. And now we'll do a little exercise. So I would like you to think of a story that you've been carrying with you. It can be recent, it can be an old story, where you feel like a victim. There's something, you have a complaint about something. And you feel that if only this had happened, then it would have been different. So think for a moment of any such occurrence in your life where you feel you were the victim and it didn't happen according to how you wanted it to be. And try to find the emotional charge or the hook, what made you become the victim. What is it? Where do you blame somebody else or the external circumstances? So just take a few moments and reflect upon that. And then let us go to the second part of the exercise to reframe by asking, what was my role in it? If I take responsibility, what happened? How do I see the story from that side? Can I still tell the same story with me as the actor instead of somebody else? If I take responsibility, how would I tell this story now? Not as a victim, but as the creator of that. And also, what could I have done to create another outcome? So these are two different things. One is just the same story, but you relate the story differently from a different perspective, not as a victim, but as the creator of that specific outcome. And the other part is, what could you have done in that situation to create a different outcome if you had a different inner orientation? Giving you again a few more minutes. Okay. Okay. So, how was that? Did you have any insights, any light bulbs happening, any change of perspective? Would anybody like to share?
Hannibal. I it was bad. It was bad because I never ever blame anyone else. I always blame myself. So
Okay.
I don't know what to do with that situation.
Blaming
Reframing.
yourself is also is also blaming, you know.
Yeah, I know, but it's
You can
difficult.
take powerful responsibility or you can just blame yourself, which means you're also in the victim mode.
So I know, but if I reframe it, it doesn't help.
Are you able to rewrite the story in such a way that it is empowering instead of debilitating? That you say, okay, I would have made a different choice, but that helped me to realize something. It was a learning experience. So there's a difference between I regret that I did this, and then you are staying in that mode of victim, of blame, or you say, okay, I made this choice at that time because I didn't know better, but it helped me to realize that, and because of that, now I know this. So that can be very empowering. You see the difference.
Yes, I do, and no, it's not. For me, it's not helpful.
You can
This
you can play with it a little bit.
mm,
You can also think, with the knowledge that I have now, what would I do differently? And you can choose that as your reality.
yes, I do that, but I still remember all the cases when I felt, you know, that I was that I did something wrong and I feel bad about it.
Yeah, this feeling bad, that's the only problem, this feeling bad. That will not help you. I mean, rationally, you can understand that feeling bad does not help the situation. It only lowers your frequency. And then
Mm.
that's exactly what you attract again. So these are the four levels. You understand it. Okay, now I can change it because I understand the dynamics.
Hmm. So, do you have any advice how not to feel bad? How to elevate the
Well,
frequency?
I would say at this point, the practices are done in our circles, to really get to the work. But in
Okay.
general, this knowledge alone could help you to get out of that.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ladili.
Yeah, I would like to share that actually I managed to visualize the situation again and
Mm-hmm.
see how I could have behaved so that I wouldn't have been a victim and I wouldn't have suffered from the consequences of the situation, and
Mm-hmm.
how I could have been, let's say, the winner of the situation. So yeah, that's I think that's really helpful,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be useful for me in the future to be more aware
Mm-hmm.
of the pattern behind, because I can clearly see the pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and to become more, let's say, to have some more niti, because finally it's about that. Before, not to react, but to think about how shall I behave according to my interest, according to what I want to achieve, and not be a victim, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could clearly see that I've been a victim because I've been reacting to a certain pattern that I had inside of me.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
excellent. Thank you. What I want to also mention again, whoever is not part yet of the circles, you're welcome. We can still open that circle. We're doing more extensive work in these circles and more practices and you can try it out if you like, and we'll meet bi-weekly. Okay, so would anybody else like to share something? Any questions, any comments?
No, it was very clear, very nice and clear.
Okay, Naji.
Hi, Malachi. So I had a question, which is I think this came out sounding kind of like a question I asked last time, but maybe a slightly different angle on a similar question. So, in the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about how my inner world shapes my outer world, especially in the long run. I know like it may not do it like tomorrow, right? Like if I change my thinking today, I may not see it change in my outer world tomorrow, but like a year from now, I think it'll make a huge difference. Um, but I'm still, and I've actually been reading some Rhonda Byrne. She's that author I mentioned at the very first or the second workshop, I think, a while back. And she doesn't. She's her writing is she encourages selfishness, like so, which may not be the best thing for someone trying to do bhakti or someone in the bhakti world. Like she's very much like go get what you want, and it's not. And there's definitely a place for that. So that's kind of what's been on my mind is how to like. I do have preferences. I definitely have preferences, and I would even say I'm a pretty ambitious person. I have some ambitions which are very difficult to accomplish and require years of effort. And I want to be able to use this approach of changing the inner world first, but how do I do that, but still somehow get Krishna involved a little bit, at least? Even if I'm not doing an advanced kind of bhakti, how do I follow my preferences and still get Krishna involved to some degree?
There's no contradiction. I mean, Krishna involving should be at every step, at every level. This is our identity. So we know this is what we want. We want to have Krishna as part of our life, like breathing air, everything. I mean, that's the state of Vasudeva Saramiti. If we really understand what that means, there's no separation. We cannot be separated. I mean, it's an illusion to think that we are separated. We're just not aware of it all the time. But when we cannot, it's not practical to be constantly aware of it. Otherwise, we can't do anything. But once we really understand this, first intellectually, and then more and more through our practice, we're imbibing it. Whatever we are surrounding ourselves with is in connection with Krishna. That's what our sadhana is all about. All what we're doing is to remind us of Krishna. That is our reality. So there's no way you can escape it. It will be so. And then at that point, unconscious competence means that you know it so much you're breathing it. You don't have to, oh Krishna, Krishna. He's there. He's so natural that it's like it's like a loving relationship. If you really love somebody, you don't have to constantly remind yourself, oh, I love this person. You just know it. You feel it. That's who you are. So this is no problem. You get there. This is part of the process, part of sadhana. So that's what we want to achieve, actually. I mean, these techniques help us to become better devotees, to get into the flow of being devotees without struggling, without smashing against the window like the fly, and we are not getting it. We are not. Philosophy is too difficult and sadhana is too difficult. That's what we want to avoid. We want to get into the flow and like to do it. We love to do the sadhana because it's pleasurable. It's our nature. That's where we want to go, and that's easy to do that if we understand.
Okay, yeah. So ambitions, because my ambitions could be seen as worldly ambitions. My biggest ambitions aren't, it's not like I'm at the point where my only ambition is to attain Uttama Bhakti or something like that. I know maybe some people here have set that goal for themselves, which is admirable, but I've had people years ago from another group, I've had people tell me you need to throw away everything except this desire to get bhakti, and I wasn't willing to do that. So maybe one day, but my ambitions could be seen as worldly ambitions. I mean, my ambitions are to attain a certain kind of intellectual state. And there's plenty of people who do this without knowing about Krishna or bhakti or anything. But is there some way to mix to thoroughly mix my ambitions with bhakti so that they're simultaneously worldly ambitions and bhakti related ambitions at the same time. Like I don't necessarily want to get married, but some people, you read about in the Bhagavatam, like householders who are great bhaktas and they somehow mix their householdership with being a bhakta. Is there some way to mix other kinds of worldly ambitions with being a bhakta too?
Of course, I mean, now it's becoming a bhakti class, but certainly
Okay.
we have to start somewhere, and it would be artificial to think
Yeah.
we are already at that stage and we throw out. That's not. We can't do that. We have to be realistic and see where we stand. That's really we stand here and we have other desires, and we have to admit it first. That's the first step. We can't deny it. We can't suppress it, otherwise we become hypocrites and it will backfire. So we have to see, okay, here I stand, I have this desire, and then you try to baptize it. Like, okay, I have this desire to play tennis or whatever, to go horse riding, I don't know, whatever it is. And then you just try, okay, how? So let me try to do this for Krishna. Let me try to make a devotional act out of it. Even if you only think, I'm doing this for the pleasure of Krishna, or I'm doing this to get my body fit too. But you just combine it with bhakti. I mean, that's the whole process. You don't separate yourself from it, and you don't feel bad about it. That's the worst thing. You can enjoy doing that, but you just add Krishna to it, and it's a natural, gradual process. And you stay in the flow. That is really important, that flow state. Otherwise, you're in the by-me state. You're burning out. You're burning yourself out. You're piling up whatever, and I don't like to do the seva, and I'm still doing it because I have to do it, or whatever. That will not keep you long in bhakti. To really have a good foundation and to keep doing it and to increase it, you have to like it. And so, you do what you like to do and you add Krishna to it.
Yeah. And I guess Krishna, one of the distinctive characteristics of Krishna is that he's compatible with everything, right? I mean, like there's nothing that Krishna can't come into contact with. He can
Basically,
come into
yes. I mean,
contact
there
with
are a
everything.
few things, but
Except offense. But yeah,
that's how we
anything
do.
that's not offensive, he can come into contact with. Yeah.
that's
Thank you, Malaji.
welcome. Shikama, one last.
The question is not so far away from Nadi's. On one hand, we were speaking about the identification. So the identification as a devotee, so that we really believe on that. On the other hand, not to forget how incomplete I am, how far away I am. So this is a trap I'm a long time struggling. So at one part I'm identifying, and a little bit my story. So I was totally in another world. Inside I didn't doubt, but outside I didn't do these things I did before. And if I observe me, I switch here and there. And then I hear the classes and I hear, okay, we are not there. And Krishna just takes people who are really surrendered. And on the other hand, I should identify to really get there. So this is something my brain cannot, this is not in my brain.
The gap.
Yeah.
The gap. So that's okay. So if you look at it from these 4 states, so the state of conscious incompetence, so that means you feel you're not fully there, you feel something is lacking. So the question is, do I have the desire to get there? And if I have the desire, then that is perfect. That alone will bring me there. But the worst thing is really if we feel bad, we have to get out of that state. That keeps us trapped in anything, in bhakti as well as in any other thing. If we feel lowly, that means a low frequency, and that's what will attract and will struggle, and it will be painful. It will be unpleasant. So we have to embrace where we are, what we are. That we have to accept that fully. That's very, very important. Otherwise, we're cutting ourselves really off. We're depriving ourselves of the joy of life. We have to accept it, and we acknowledge it, and whatever we see, okay, here is where I am, and this is where I want to get, and whatever is for me is the right way. Maybe I want to take, slow steps, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong in that regard. As long as I know this is my goal, and I'll get there, and I have the faith also in Krishna will help me. That's also very important. Krishna is not a cruel judge. He will help us. We have the desire, and we'll get there. And we accept ourselves. This self-acceptance is really important. And gratitude for what you already have.
So, from my perspective, if I think in this therapeutic statue, I always say to the people, accept your status where you are, and then you will see what can happen, and you have more place to see what it is. Maybe it's like
yes, yeah, that's true.
this.
Yeah.
Thank you.